Hello, welcome to the Housing Sector Podcast. My list of reluctant housing heroes grows yet more. Today we are talking to Deepa, who went to the extraordinary lengths of getting a petition. Have I got that right, Deepa?
That's correct.
And the petition was in order to, and we're just going to refer to them as your housing association. What made you go to the lengths of starting a petition against your housing association? What was the root cause of that?
I've been sitting in limbo for a number of years now since Grenfell and the cladding remediation. And I'd really like to sell this property. I have asked several times if the Housing Association will buy back, because I'm in one of those very awkward situations where I'd like to sell, but I'm missing a certificate. And I can't move on with my life and, provide a home for myself and my family until this flat is out of the way. I continue to rent another house in Leicester so that I could, at least provide a suitable home. And I'm getting nowhere as far as I'm concerned with the housing association.
Okay, so you've had a home and you want to sell it back to your housing association or sell it to a third party that's so far not involved. Surely enough, that's quite simple. That's quite easy. What's the problem?
Well, the problem is that I'm missing what's called the EWS 1 certification. So we had one that was drawn up post our remediation, and we had received that back in 2023. At that point, I was elated because I thought, great, we've finally got the certificate I've been waiting for so that I can put the property on the market. And then went through a process of having lots of viewings and trying to get the flat sold. It was great because, I finally received an offer through a process of it. It took about 6 or 7 months of a bit of due diligence and, conveyancers queries and so on and so forth, to then that result in us being very, very close to completion. But the solicitor's query had come back with but your certificate's been signed off by somebody who has been expelled from the IFE.
Okay, let's now look. I'm always the stupidest person in the room when it comes to these conversations. What was the certificate regarding EWS? What does that mean?
The EWS certificate gives, I suppose, lenders and those providing mortgages the assurance that the building has been assessed for its safety. It has been given a rating, and that rating will then, determine the amount of work or that needs to be done on the property itself. And this is really to do with the external wall cladding system. That's what EWS stands for. Now, I'm very assured that the building is safe, but the problem is that lenders don't like to do any kind of work. They don't like to do any lending on any cladded properties without having some sort of assurance. And for them, that certificate is their assurance. Now, the certificate was initially, when I initially had that assessment, it came out as the property's fine, it's been signed off, it's stamped, and so on and so forth, which is why I was then able to put the property on the market. You can't generally sell without one. Although, I suppose what you see is guidance out there. So, the mortgage lender's handbook says slightly differently. So agreements have been made that mortgage lenders will actually provide mortgages on properties that don't have an EWS. However, in practice, that's very few and far between. I don't know of any situations where the lender has said, yep, cool, without that, we will, we'll go ahead and we'll provide you a mortgage. I guess it provides some sort of risk assurance for the lender themselves, but also for the buyer, it provides some sort of assurance that, this has been correctly assessed and they're not then going to be landed with X tens of thousands amount of bills to have to fix something that they never had anything to do with in the first place. But that's where we have ended up. So that's basically the certificate itself. Just to take you back as well, our property was in fact remediated pretty much a few weeks after Grenfell. So the cladding was assessed, and then it was taken off because it was deemed to have the same ACM cladding as Grenfell. And we spent, I suppose, 2017 to 2018 without with in the process of this remediation. It took a while to get it all sorted, but by the end of 2018 we had new cladding back on. As far as we were concerned, the rectifications had been done. We were just then in a queue to wait for the certification to be done, because also around that time, I think it was in 2019, there was then legislation that required that EWS certificate. So previously it wasn't. And so my housing association hadn't gotten in queue to be able to provide that certification, so then we could start a sales process and move on. We then went to the back of the queue of everybody. Lots and lots of building managers were waiting for those assessments to be done. Only a handful of engineers who had the PI to be able to, and also the skill set to be able to do these assessments. And in general, I think that they can't really be done as a desktop survey. I do think that, the engineer needs to visit the site and actually do a proper analysis of, what's gone back on, what materials, can we verify these materials, and so on. So yeah, from 2019 to 2023, we're talking 4 years. That's how long it took for me to get that certificate the first time round. Now, I don't go out and get that myself. I can't source it myself. It requires the housing association to go out and, go through their procurement process and source a supplier accordingly, do the right due diligence around, who they're going to have assessing. And yeah, it took 4 years the first time round. So
But then
when I eventually
got it,
go on.
and then this
Yeah.
guy wasn't qualified or had been expelled, did you say?
Well, yes. I mean, when we received it in 2023, I was literally over the moon, because this was the one step that I had been waiting for, to then be allowed to sell the property. And waiting for 4 years, that's an incredibly long time to put your life on hold.
Yeah.
So I was elated, thinking, great, this is, now I can move on. But in actual fact, it turns out 2 years later, all of what was uncovered was that the engineer and the organization that was his company had been found to, I think the term is allegedly, not doing the work correctly. Now, I don't want to get into the technicals of this, but what ended up happening was there was a suspension, and then there was an investigation by the IFE, who are his body, his regulatory body, and then there was his expulsion from the body, which means, I guess when you're looking at it from a risk perspective, a mortgage lender is going to look at that and think, well, if your own regulatory body doesn't trust the work that you've done, then neither can we. And so,
And I'm assuming this guy had been round to a lot of other flats, and there may be lots of people who think they've got this certificate, haven't gone to sell and gone to a lender, and could just be, a time bomb.
I would say so, yes. I've seen evidence of quite a few other blocks who were going through this same stress. I know that some housing associations and some freeholders have tried to get ahead of that and already started to put the work out, to schedule in a new inspection. The thing is that my housing association have been quite significantly delayed in getting on this bandwagon, which means that we are, again, right at the back of the queue. So I don't know, could we be looking at another 4 years to get this work done? But yes, in terms of how many assessments were done, I don't have the exact number, I'm sorry, but I know it's well into the thousands, and I know that a significant amount of money was made from doing those assessments. Where that leaves anybody in terms of what went wrong there, I currently don't know. I, as a resident and as a leaseholder and a shared owner, cannot go out there and take any action against this person myself. It requires the housing association or freeholder or whoever it was that procured the service to go off and take that legal action. And whether anything is going to happen or come of that, I don't know. But does it mean that we all are now in this unfortunate position that all residents are going to have to pay to have another survey done? They cost about £10,000, as far as I'm aware. Do we have to pay for that ourselves, or is this Is it going to come through our service charges because it's just one of those unfortunate costs that we now have to bear the burden? Or will it be actually taken and shouldered by the housing association, who the initial procurement was? Or will it go through their insurances? I actually don't know the answer to any of these questions, but this is something that does, worry me.
It
Because
will
we could be
always it
looking.
will always come back to the resident's cost at the end of it. They will pass on the cost if it's through their insurance or from. Can I just get this bit clearer in my head? Did the housing association say to you, actually, this certificate isn't valid because we've now found out that that's suspended, or was it your lender that went, we've done our checks and this guy isn't valid?
It wasn't the housing association and it wasn't my lender. It was actually the buyer's solicitor. So through their conveyancing process had discovered this and then alerted us, myself and my solicitor, and then we went back to the housing association. Now, what actually happened was, through that, obviously, I was very frustrated. I was, 6 or 7 months into a potential sale process, back and forth, a lot of back and forth in terms of what was being asked for, documentation requirements and queries and so on. And then the housing association came back with, but we believe that this certificate is valid, even though evidence to the contrary, well, what do you do with that? It just made me very, very angry, very, very frustrated. And I ended up in a back and forth chain again. It was very much along the lines of, yes, but we've got lenders who won't accept it. You've got X, Y, and Z housing associations who have taken a different course of action to you. They have immediately gone and gotten in the queue to get a new certificate scheduled. And you are still standing behind the fact that you don't think that this is a problem. And some of the workarounds to that were, well, look, we can provide you with assurance in terms of written assurance to the buyer's solicitor, but also the buyer's lender. We can provide you with the landlord certificate, which I had obviously, done the due diligence and I'd obtained that years before. But we still believe this certificate is valid. And it just felt a little bit backward and a little bit, I don't know what the term is. It feels
Well,
naive,
I've got a
but
few
ignoring.
terms for it, but none of them we should perhaps air. And we've said at the beginning we're not going to name your housing association, but I've got a few. But then, okay, so your housing association's then gone, well, we're going to offer this assurance, but the third party lender said, no, we're not touching it with a barge pole.
I don't think it was the third party lender that said no. I think had the buyer tried to obtain a mortgage through other lenders, they may have managed to find somebody, but terms may have been slightly different. Interest rate may have been higher to account for the amount of risk involved and so on. I don't think you could secure the same deal. I just don't. I haven't seen evidence where lenders are accepting mortgages on cladded apartments without an EWS certificate that is valid. So I don't know. I actually don't know. With the handbook, with the mortgage lender's handbook, whether or not they are actually lending. But I think what this points to more is that if you're a savvy buyer, you will see that as an indication of, well, what happened in this chain of events? What happened during the procurement process for such services? And is this an indication or, a demonstration of the practices within the housing association? Was it just a quick, let's get this certificate done? Or, was there a little bit more due diligence involved in there? And if you are a savvy buyer, you are thinking from your point of view, and I think it's rightly so, is this a right purchase for me, given what's happened so far? Could this mean that, if this certificate is invalid and, an expelled member of the IFE did the work, does that mean that something else is going to come about from it? Is there going to be a risk that there's more work to be done? Something else will be uncovered, or this was missed or that was missed, and does that then mean more? It's more work, which ultimately means more money, and that cost is then, like you say yourself, will be filtered down to the leaseholder. the resident.
You're right. If you're a savvy buyer, you would definitely walk away. Why would you want to get into a relationship with a housing association that can't do legal requirement properly? That would be the problem. All right, look, this is an absolute nightmare for you. You've given us a sort of idea of the time frame. You've now got a flat in Leicester, but you've still got this other flat that you now can't sell.
So yes, the shared ownership leasehold apartment with the housing association is in London, in central London. And for years, I'd been telling them that it's not appropriate for me and my three children. There's three children. I've got a daughter and I've got two sons, and it's a two-bedroom apartment, which then isn't suitable for a family. I explained, the extenuating circumstances and it being not fit for purpose. And, they gave me an exceptional agreement that I could then move out and I could go and rent elsewhere, which meant ultimately that I moved back to Leicester because that's where my family are. And I've got some, support around here. We are renting a house in Leicester, which gives us the space that the children need. It gives them the outdoor space and also, just a little bit more comfort in terms of some privacy for my daughter and also the space for my sons. Now, what I've been left with is the shared ownership flat still has to be covered in terms of the bills. So I still have to pay the mortgage. I have to pay the shared ownership part of rent. I have to cover all of the service charges. I am paying for the insurance for the building. I am paying all of the utility bills, so council tax, electricity, gas, water, whatever it is. And there's no one living there. I did get permission to sublet the apartment. And when I got permission to do that, I had to jump through a number of hoops with my mortgage lender and then the council and also the housing association. So I've had to, do quite a bit of work in terms of getting permission to be able to do this. I have to go out and get my own certificate. So I have to get my own EPC, my own gas safety certificate. I have to get the electricals checked. I have to get landlord's insurance. And let's be fair, living in London wasn't appropriate for me and the family, which is why we're in Leicester, where we've got the space. But also running to and from London every now and then as a landlord to fix the odd problem here or there is also not appropriate when I've got a family to look after and they're young children. They're not able to take them to themselves to and from school themselves. So it put me in a bit of a predicament. Yes, I would love to have those bills and the flat taken care of. And it would be very, very handy to have somebody living there to look after the place and just keep it maintained. But I also don't want to become a landlord. I never did. And this is something I've been forced into doing just so I can move away. It has been sat empty since probably since it went on the market. And so we're talking, that was about 18 months ago now. So it's been sat empty for this amount of time.
So we've got a shortage of housing. We've got a housing association with a house that's now sat empty, and we have to worry about how many times this is happening that we're simply unaware of. Okay, so I almost mentioned them there. We're not mentioning them. When you've gone to the housing association and said, I've now got a property that I can't sell, that I can't sublet, even though there is the option to do that, it's not appropriate for me to do it, it's sat there empty. What has their response been?
There's no response. It's your obligation is that, you've signed the lease and you need to make these payments. I can't not pay for it. I don't want to then be taken, have legal action taken against me for not making a payment. I've always done things by the book, and this is also another thing that I continue to do by the book. It may shoot myself in the foot, but I have my integrity intact. I know that there are other cases where people are subletting and they're doing it illegally. They haven't gone through all of the hoops and the processes that I've gone through, and they will sublet, or they may just rent out a room or something like that to cover the bills, but it's just not something that I feel comfortable doing. I also don't want to feel responsible for somebody living in an apartment where I don't have the EWS certificate to say that this place is safe. And yes, I might have landlord insurance, But that doesn't stop you, the empathy and the compassionate side of you thinking, well, is it appropriate for somebody to be living there? I do believe that the building is safe, but there's always that seed in the back of your mind, isn't there?
Mm.
Is it? Is it not? But that's not something that's taken into account by the housing association. It's very much well, these are the rules. This is what you need to do. You've got to cover the bills. Their response to when I've asked for them to buy back, because let's say, for example, what you're saying is, oh, in their opinion, the flat's fine, the block is fine, we just need to get another certificate done. Therefore, we know at some point it will sell, but we can give you assurances that, the value of the property is X, Y, and Z, and that, we are happy for that to go on the market. But if they are so certain of it, why wouldn't they buy that property back themselves, knowing that at some point down the line they could sell it if they wanted to, and in the meantime they can get somebody in who will, that eases some of the burden on social housing. So yes, to your point, there are a lot of people out there who are probably in this same situation. So how many empty properties have we got which are not being used? They're being paid for. Housing associations don't really care, because I guess that means that, the costs are being covered anyway. But what we're not doing is answering the question of the number of people and the number of families that are in central London that need somewhere to live, who are on the list for social housing and are being told there's nothing available. It makes no sense to me whatsoever. I can tell you 3 or 4 families from my children's former school in London who were on the list for social housing, and they're still waiting. It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It beggars belief, doesn't it? Okay, we've got the background. Now, you've gone to the action of getting a petition started, which seems like a sensible option. And at this point, it seems like your only option if you're getting nowhere and banging your head against the wall. So, what was the petition about? What was that?
The petition was like you say, me banging my head against a wall and trying to raise awareness of the fact that this is going on. It doesn't make sense to have properties empty while there is a need for social housing. It doesn't make sense to not buy this property back when you clearly believe in its value.
Mm.
It doesn't make sense to keep me tethered to something that I need to move away from. I can't. I think what's really driving me up the wall here is that I've been in this state of limbo for so many years, since Grenfell, and then since the cladding was being remediated. Since that point where I wanted to move away, I've been held back at every point. No, you can't yet. You can't yet. You can't yet. And what are we talking? 6 years? It's been about 6 years. How long can I keep putting my life on hold? My career moves, my family's schooling. How long can I put their life on hold to just wait for somebody to say, yeah, okay, it's all right, Deepa. You know what? You can finally sell your property. I'll tell you what, we'll buy it back from you so that you don't have to worry about this any longer. And what really grinds my gears is that because of the lease that I'm involved in, it's a shared ownership leasehold situation. And the covenants of a shared ownership situation are that you cannot go out and get yourself another mortgage. So should I have been in a fortunate enough position where I had saved up some money and I could put a deposit down on a house here in Leicester for me and the children, I can't do it. I'm not allowed. I'm legally not allowed to do that. And this puts me in a really tricky situation. I can't move on until that flat is sold or somebody buys it from me. And I really don't mind whether this is an external buyer or a housing association who's buying it back, or even the local council. They are all very happy, very happy for anybody to have it. The thing is, I just want it shifted soon, because I've put my life on hold for 6 years. I've put my children's life on hold for 6 years. And is this really appropriate in today's age and in the situation that social housing is in for it not to be a way to move forward, a way for the housing association to move forward? And that's really the crux of the petition, is pretty much saying that this is the stress that I've been under for this many years. I've done everything as I've been asked to do. I have raised awareness of this several times. And every time I have asked for a buyback, I've been told, no, we don't provide this. There is no reason why, well, as far as I'm concerned, why they shouldn't be able to provide it. I've seen the size of the housing association. I've seen the organisational structure. I have seen the accounts. There is the provision on a balance sheet to be able to cover this. I speak as an accountant, so I've looked at the balance sheet and I understand that the money's there. Should they want to take this as an option to put that back into social housing, knowing that those rents will be covered? So it speaks to me. It speaks from a point of either a lack of care and consideration for your customers, or from a point of greed, that they know they're getting the money in and they don't really care where it's coming from.
No extra work, no effort, profit before people. Your integrity and your intelligence speaks volumes about you, but it's also a weakness that they're going to exploit. She's not going to Airbnb it. She's not going to rent it out. She's just going to keep paying.
Because I wouldn't do anything that was, against the law.
You're a good person.
So I wouldn't jeopardize. Also, I've worked very hard in my life for the last 20 odd years to become an accountant, and I've built up credibility. I've built up, the qualification and the status that I've got. I wouldn't jeopardize that.
Yeah.
And yes, anyone who knows that about me would know that that would be something that they can exploit, but I'm not saying that that's the right thing to do. So
is there any, well, first of all, the petition is still live, isn't it?
It is, yes, it is live. Please find it. It's on change.org and it's
I will have
free Deepa.
A QR code would have been up on the screen throughout this, flashing up, and we'll make sure that's in the comments field. So we'll have that going throughout that, so people can sign that. And please do sign that. Let's get support for Deepa and her family. At the moment, with your housing association, is there any light at the end of the tunnel? Are they in the queue? Do they know when the certificate's coming? Has there been any sort of positive signs?
I want to answer this diplomatically. I find that one hand doesn't know what the other hand is doing. I've spoken to a number of different departments, and the view is that I don't, when I talk to an expert from one department, they won't know what's going on in another area. So, if I say, well, my entire case, I don't want to have to tell you everything every time I call you, but my whole case. So why can't you just go off and coordinate this department, this department, this department to give me one answer? Whereas what I'm getting now is I'm getting one answer from one area and one answer from another area. So in terms of getting this new certification done and the inspection scheduled, I've been told you'll have one by the end of summer 2025. Now it's July. I don't know what you count as the end of summer, but that doesn't give you much longer, does it? And the other side is saying, well, we've scheduled the request for the works to be done, but there's no date for the inspection yet. We don't know how long that's going to be. And once the inspection is done, it could be anything around 12 weeks before we have a report. But that's minimum 12 weeks. It's not you'll have one sooner. So I could be looking at 3 months at minimum. But I don't know, because I've been told the end of summer, which is only 2 months away in my view.
Yeah.
So I'm none the wiser. And like I said, left hand doesn't know what right hand's doing, in my view. So I don't really know where to go from here.
I wish I had an answer for you. I just, every week we record these podcasts, and every week I come away just like, what the bloody hell is going on? It just stuns me, absolutely beggars belief.
It's a real farce. All the while, all of the bills, they all need to be covered by me. But also, when I am finally given the green light, here you go, here's your EWS, I have to go and put that property on the market. I have to bear all the costs of remarketing it, the LPE pack, which is the management pack. I have to pay for all of this. I have to pay for all the photographs to be done. Yes, I've done that all once before. I may have to pay for, new gas safety certificates and so on and so forth. I've got to pay for all of that to be redone because it's now outdated from when it was first done. I then have to pay the estate agent. I have to pay the housing association solicitors' fees, as well as my own. None of this makes any sense to me. Why is all the burden pushed to the leaseholder, the shared owner, when they are the ones who were financially vulnerable in the first place, which is why they needed to enter into a shared ownership agreement? But yet you're seeing that as okay, and it beggars belief that this is the way things go. We're seeing the cash cow, and we are milked at every single point. Every point.
The cash cow is an expression I've used time and time again, yet only since I've been dealing with housing associations, particularly my own. Deepa, we're coming to the end of the call. If you had a message, if you had a couple of sentences for the CEO of your unnamed, and you chose to unname them, and I admire your integrity, the unknown CEO of the housing association, what would that message be?
Okay, my message to the CEO of my housing association is, if you are not willing to put your own family members through this, why would you do it to one of your residents? Your customers should be first and foremost, and I am your customer. It's not your supplier. It's not the provider of your next estate. It is me. So treat me with the respect that I deserve, and actually respond to us and get your teams to work in a joint-up fashion. I think if you put yourself in my shoes and in the shoes of all of your residents, you approach this with an air of empathy and compassion, you'll see why we are so frustrated and so upset. And all we're asking for is respect.
Well, that sums up your story and the story of so many other residents across the country, and all these housing associations and all these events and the Chartered Institute of Housing. Oh, we've put the customer at the heart of everything we do. And yet here we are, keep having the same conversations. Deepa, thank you very much indeed. Please stay in contact. If you're watching this, please use the QR code. Please sign that petition and do what you can. And Deepa, stay in contact. Let's find out how this goes, and let's keep an update. But for now, thank you very much.
Thank you for talking to me today. I appreciate it.